What's up guys, and welcome to another Porsche review. Today we are in a 2004 996.2 generation Porsche 911 Carrera. This is the base model 911 that was available 20 years ago, and we're gonna see how it stacks up now in 2024. The 996 generation obviously was the first water-cooled 911 that moved away from the old air-cooled engines. And this .2 version, or facelifted version of the 996, has a couple of differences from the 996.1. The biggest noticeable difference from the outside is these updated headlights. Gone are the fried egg yolk headlights of the 996.1. These still kind of retain that shape, but they're a lot sleeker, and their overall car just looks a lot better in my opinion. The .2 also has the updated 3.6 liter flat 6 engine. It's naturally aspirated, and compared to the old 3.4, this makes an extra 20 horsepower. So we're at 320 horsepower. Redline looks to be a little over 7,000 RPM. The owner, Tyler, has done nothing to this car in terms of modification. It's got 150,000 miles. The interior, well, it doesn't hold up that well by modern standards. A lot of fake buttons here, or blanks, where there probably would have been options that you get for this car. The shape of these buttons and the look and feel, very plasticky and cheap. And in fact, the lock button actually just broke when Tyler pressed it earlier this morning. But despite the less than ideal look and feel of the interior, it still has an interesting sort of charm to it. It feels like you're hopping in a time machine and going back 25 plus years. But how does this drive? Is it really an archaic 20 to 25 year old driving experience? Or does it still offer a usable amount of performance and fun? And might it just be an excellent value in sports cars, especially in the Porsche world, considering you can pick these up for right around $25,000 to $30,000 depending on condition? I don't believe this one has the optional limited slip differential, so we're on an open diff, rear engine of course, so plenty of traction. Let's see how it feels. Second gear. Gearing is pretty tall, but the engine feels really good. 320 horsepower, even by 2024 standards, is nothing to scoff at. But this car very much feels like a 911. It doesn't hide that rear weight distribution. It's got that pendulum feeling that you either love or hate. Easy to heel toe, really good throttle response, even though this is drive-by-wire. Makes a really good sound as well, this flat 6. Revving out to over 7,000. Wow, this shifter, the throws are hilariously long, and the actual shift feel itself isn't very good. It has a pretty sloppy linkage. I mean, just look at this, third to fourth. I feel like I'm going from full arm extension all the way back here, but it's easy to drive. How easy it is to heel toe downshift. Plenty of feedback from this hydraulic steering rack as well. The ratio is very slow, and there's definitely some on-center slop. Not sure if that's just because this needs some new bushings, given it has 150k miles. But the feedback is definitely there. Let's try a first gear pull here. Is plenty of straight line performance. This car weighs just under 3,000 pounds. So 320 horsepower is still plenty of power. The gearing does feel a bit long, but because this engine, this 3.6 liter, makes pretty good torque in the mid-range, the gearing is not a big issue. With that pendulum feeling, when I get on the throttle and I transfer that load to the rear axle, that's where you feel the limitations of this platform. The 996 did nothing really to hide that feeling, unlike the later 991 generation and now the latest 992. They barely feel rear engine at all. but there's definitely a charm to the 996. The first few times I drove one, the rear biased weight distribution definitely caught me a little off guard, and I came away feeling confused because I like so many aspects about this car, but I wasn't used to that handling. But now that I've spent more time with these, I'm starting to appreciate them a lot more. This car is all about the charm. It's not an experience that is replicated by any new car. This car offers a look back at what made the 911 such an iconic sports car without having to go too far back. You don't have to go into the ridiculous world of air-cooled Porsches nowadays, where you're basically getting into a tin can, or at least something that feels like a tin can on the inside, with an awkward seating position and all the quirks that come with an air-cooled 911, plus the fact that the market for those is still outrageous. Anything less than 50 grand and you're getting a bucket. For 25 grand, sometimes even 20 grand, you can find a clean, unmolested, or lightly modified 996, either a .1 or a .2. And this still offers a lot of the qualities that make the old 911 such an enjoyable and unique driving experience, while offering some level of modernity. It's still very much a Porsche experience, just at a fraction of the cost of either a much newer 911 or those older air-cooled 911s. So the question is, why are these so cheap? I've gone over this in many other videos. Long story short, it's the engine, reliability issues, IMS bearing, bore scoring, yada yada. But, and I've said this before, if you don't track these cars, you replace that IMS bearing, upgrade to the dual row version, or some of the aftermarket solutions offered by companies like LN Engineering. As long as you drive these frequently, change the oil often, you're really not going to have many problems at all with the reliability of this motor. And that makes this car such a value play, in my opinion. For well under $30,000, you can have a true 911 experience that does not try to hide having all that weight hanging over the rear axle, plus having genuinely good steering feel, something that we don't even get in modern 911s unless you go up to the GT products, and even then you could argue those don't have as much feedback. All of these great things bundled together in one package that actually is surprisingly daily drivable. And the straight line performance, it's still adequate, but when you're not pushing it on a canyon road, you just want to commute in peace, this offers a level of refinement that even an old, say, 964 won't give you. As long as you can live with the exterior and interior styling of the 996, which is still to this day probably the most hated in 911 history. Personally, I think the 996.2 looks really good. It's a big step up above the 996.1 in terms of that front end. I think this car looks fine. It's a great size as well, and it weighs just under 3,000 pounds, which is perfect. A big shout out to the owner Tyler for letting me review this bone stock 150,000 mile 996.2 Carrera. Every time I drive one of these, I become more and more appreciative of the 996 generation, and I become even more acutely aware of what a good value proposition this car really is in today's Porsche market. Let me know what you think of this car. How does this compare to other options in that $20,000 to $30,000 price range? Do you think the reliability scares that exist to this day are justified, or do you think this is truly a diamond in the rough? Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.